Good morning, everybody. Good evening to those who are joining us from Baku. Today's session is hosted by the United States Azerbaijan Chamber of Commerce. I am Atik Bakshov, Executive Director for the Chamber. Before starting, we have a few logistical issues first. Again, please keep your microphones muted if you don't speak. It will help us to avoid any background noise. If you want to input questions or comments, you can do it after our speakers finish their presentations. If you have a question, please indicate your name in the WebEx chat box. We'll be monitoring it time to time, and we'll give you a floor to ask your question. And the last but not least, today's meeting is being recorded and live streamed over the USACC Facebook page. Please feel free to share it, to like, whatever you wish. Could you please check if somebody has open microphone? Please mute your microphone. This creates inconvenience for our speakers, for all of us. Thank you. Using this opportunity also, I would love to congratulate all the Muslims living in different parts of the world. Today is Eid al-Adha. Many Muslims, or all Muslims around the world, are celebrating this day. Also, we are living through very challenging days, starting almost from the beginning of the year. We wish you this day, Eid al-Adha, bring peace and stability to all of us. I'm glad that you all can join us today's web conference. What should be interesting and important discussion about the role of direct air cargo logistics between the United States and Azerbaijan. Today we have a line of great experts on air cargo. Join us, Mr. Vugar Mammadov, Vice President of SilkWay West Airlines. Mr. Mammadov has been serving at his current position since December 2017. His extensive professional background includes several leading positions in local aviation companies. Mr. Mammadov holds degrees from Azerbaijan State Oil Academy in Business Administration and Lancaster University in Logistics and Supply Chain Management. Mr. Thomas Crabtree, Regional Director for Market Analysis at Boeing Commercial Airplanes. Tom holds his current position for over 2 decades. It's quite a long time, Tom. As Regional Director, Mr. Crabtree researched air cargo industry issues with specific responsibility for serving airlines in the Middle East, India, Southeast Asia, and CIS countries. He is the primary author and chief editor of the Boeing World Air Cargo Forecast, which is a leading information resource for the industry. His previous positions include sales, support engineering, flight operation engineering and marketing, product analysis, and airline economics. Tom holds a bachelor's degree and MBA from the University of Kansas. I'm glad to report that both companies are the USACC member companies. SilkWay West Airlines has been operating mixed flights to the United States since 2016. In 2016, the company and its subsidiaries received a foreign carrier air permit from U.S. Department of Transportation that allowed Azerbaijan air carrier to operate both scheduled and charter flights between Baku and New York. Shortly after that, company expanded its operation and presence in North America by adding Chicago to its flight destinations. SilkWay West operates mainly Boeing freighters between the points in the United States and Azerbaijan. SilkWay West Airlines, the part of SilkWay Airlines, the largest air cargo carrier in the region. Carrier's fleet mainly consists of Boeing aircraft. We believe today having professionals from both SilkWay and Boeing company will give you a broader perspective on the nature of air cargo trade between the United States and Azerbaijan and even beyond in a greater Central Eurasian region. I believe Vugar will have more to add on SilkWay's role and the company profile. Mr. Mammadov, I'll start with you. Then we will switch to Tom, and then we'll open the floor for the Q&A session. Mr. Mammadov, you have been with the country with the company almost from the beginning of its U.S. operations in 2016. I believe you have been engaging day-to-day statistics on flights, tonnage, value of the air cargo flights between Azerbaijan and the United States, and other flights that your company operates between different points of globe and the United States. The established fact is that air cargo occupies less than 1% of global trade by tonnage, of course. But the value of it is way higher. According to 2018 statistics, it comprises 35% of global trade by value. What would be your perspective on the role of SilkWay West operation in the air cargo trade between the United States and Azerbaijan, as well as greater Central Eurasia region? What actual value your company brings to the bilateral trade between two countries? Thank you. Floor is yours.
First of all, I would like to welcome everybody. Latik, thank you very much for this opportunity. And once we come to the question that you have raised, SilkWay West Airlines' role actually is quite big in the cooperation of the two countries. At the moment, basically, SilkWay West Airlines is the only airline and is the biggest cargo transporter between the United States and Azerbaijan, and basically in the region, because you know that besides Azerbaijan, we do operate the flights into Central Asia, into Middle East, into the CIS countries and Caspian region, and basically all the cargo that we deliver from United States, then we spread it over all our network. As to the statistics, from 2016, the first flight was raised on the 26th of May 2015, I would say, even not 16, and it was New York flight. We started with one flight per week on Boeing 747-8 aircraft, and we saw that the operation is quite good, and the demand is increasing, and it was quite interesting for both countries. And as of 2016, we added one more point, Chicago, and every year we were adding more and more frequencies per year. So at the moment, we do operate 3 weekly flights to Chicago, and beside that, we do operate regular charters to Chicago and to other cities in the United States, such as Miami. We operate charters to Washington, D.C., especially nowadays when the COVID is hitting us. We've been operated more than 100 flights, charter flights all over the world with the humanitarian cargo, with the medical equipment, including to United States. And at the moment, we do keep operate these flights, and I believe that those flights and our cooperation is helping for both countries to get stronger and to get closer to each other. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Tom, are you with us? Tom, you have been working with Azerbaijan's air cargo carrier for the last 7 or 8 years or so. Please correct me if I'm mistaken. You even been in Azerbaijan for a couple of times. What would be your views about the role of direct air cargo linkages between the United States and Azerbaijan in promoting bilateral trade?
So SilkWay is only founded in Vugar, but probably only in 2001 or 2002, the greater SilkWay group with IL-76, Ilyushin 76 freighters. So SilkWay has been around 19 years, but it has rapidly grown to be nearly one of the top 30 air cargo airlines in the world in terms of traffic volume, according to statistics that were just recently released by the industry association, the International Air Transport Association. And so that's quite an achievement for a company that's less than 20 years old to grow that quickly. And I will share in my PowerPoint slide presentation this morning just how important SilkWay has become to not only U.S. and Azerbaijan air trade, but more importantly, world trade. The SilkWay network, and I have a very brief snapshot of how SilkWay's network fits into the world air trading regime, is quite expansive, particularly between the economies of Europe, East Asia, South Asia, Africa, as well as growing linkages over the North Atlantic to the United States.
Thank you. Excuse me, Tom, I believe you have a PowerPoint presentation, right?
I do, and I am ready to share whenever the audience is ready.
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. One more moment.
Sure.
And not thinking, are you saying what?
Yes, this is good.
Great. Okay. So you already stole a bit of my thunder, and I think just suffice it to say that the air cargo industry is a niche industry on many levels, and it, in terms of, as you pointed out, in terms of actual tonnage of goods moved across international borders, it's less than 1%, but it is more than 1/3 of international air trade in terms of the value of goods transiting international frontiers. And as a consequence, it is a niche industry, both in air transport and in freight transportation in general, amongst all modes of freight transportation, but it is a critically important one. And so I'm really, really honored to be here to tell you more about what that means for the industry. And it became particularly acute, I think, to a lot of people in the last 5 months or so since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, of just how important air freight is. So it's a growth industry. It's since 1980, for almost 40 years, the industry's averaged about 5% growth per annum. This is a measurement of air cargo traffic as measured in metric tons put on airplanes, both passenger airplanes as well as dedicated freighter aircraft or all cargo airplanes, multiplied by the distance flown measured in kilometers. And we use the term RTKs, revenue ton kilometers. It's not a measurement of revenue. It is a measurement of air cargo traffic for which our customer airlines actually earn money. And you can see it's been a pretty good growth trajectory, but shifting more to the recent history, the industry has been slow since the end of 2018. We experienced some decelerating growth rates towards the latter half of 2018, and last year was a weak year for growth, 2019. A lot of people need to be reminded of this. And traffic by the end of 2019 worldwide was down about 3%. The slide you're seeing in front of you are statistics compiled monthly by the International Air Transport Association in Montreal. And you can see the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic affecting air cargo traffic, and it's down, which is contrary to a lot of expectations because people believe air cargo is booming, and it is for those airlines that have all cargo aircraft. Keep in mind that I'm going to say on many different levels, the air cargo industry is a niche industry, and as a consequence, it depends not only on freighter aircraft but passenger bellies. And with the grounding of much of the world's passenger fleet, roughly 60% of available air cargo capacity, not traffic, but capacity, it was not available as of the end of March or beginning of April. And you can see that the decline was most severe in April, but we are on a recovery trajectory. The statistics for the month of month of June 2020, at the extreme bar right there, show the traffic's down about 18%, which is not exactly a terrible result given the fact that we have seen so much of the world's passenger aircraft removed from the available capacity to the air cargo industry. So these are basically flight operation statistics that we compile weekly. And this is as of week 30, that is just last week. And we look at three different main segments of capacity: the passenger single-aisle fleet at the extreme left there, the twin-aisle passenger fleet, wide-body fleet, including those aircraft operated as those are passenger airplanes in cargo-only mode, otherwise known as P-freighters. You can see the relative takedown of capacity. It's been pretty stark, and the resumption of capacity in the passenger fleet has mostly been in single-aisle airplanes. I want to emphasize that single-aisle airplanes carry very little cargo in general when it comes to their lower hold transportation system, simply because those lower holds are not unitized for shipper convenience. At extreme right, as I'm sure Vugar will attest, freighters are working overtime in COVID-19. 10% higher utilization across the world freighter fleet, for which we can obtain flight record, which is about 3/4 of the world's active freighter aircraft. The other 25% or 500 or so airplanes are not be equipped and therefore not trackable by Flight Radar 24 record. But that being said, that fleet, that majority fleet we can track, is working 10% higher at this time than it was 1 year ago. Another way to look at this is just the relative comparison between freighter airplanes and the dark blue line there at the graph at left. These would be the passenger fleet of wide-body airplanes. There are no single-aisle airplanes or standard-body airplanes in that packed fleet in the lighter blue line. And you can see the contraction of belly capacity was 85% by April, compared to the first week of January 2020. And we've seen a gradual recovery. It's kind of plateaued, but it's still down about 70%. Now, if you look at the bar chart at right, a little bit different scenario, but you can get the idea that the passenger bellies were the primary offerings of capacity in terms of what serves the industry, but they're now less than a quarter of the available capacity to shippers worldwide. So freighters right now are providing in excess of 75% of available capacity to the industry. So what this has done is basically create a huge demand for freighters. I don't know of anybody with idle freighters unless they are down for necessary maintenance at this point in time as of July 2020, which is a pretty rare occurrence because oftentimes if major maintenance is not done during the first calendar quarter of the year, particularly during East Asia's Lunar New Year, then the months of June and July are also maintenance months because airlines that operate freighters are getting ready for what is normally the late third quarter, early fourth quarter peak season. As a consequence of this takedown of capacity, many of the world's airlines are looking at or have utilized their passenger airplanes for cargo-only mode, and in certain cases have actually removed seats, primarily in their economy class cabins, to carry more cargo, especially during the PPE relief missions that were peaking in the months of April and May, but reportedly have started to fade, I'd say in the last 4 to 8 weeks. That being said, there's not a lot of airplanes out there that you might imagine where the seats are coming out. And to give you some statistics on that. So there were, as of about a week ago, according to the Cargofax Consulting database on the 21st of July, so this is very recent information, there were 195 airlines operating in excess of 2,400 passenger airplanes strictly for the carried cargo. Most of them were based in East Asia and South Asia, then Europe, then the Middle East. And within the European region, there are at least, according to their database, Azerbaijan Airlines, or Azal, was operating 2 787-8 passenger airplanes in cargo-only mode. With, according to the Cargofax database, their seats intact. Only about 7% of all these 2,400 or so airplanes, about 160 airplanes, had their seats removed. So, and this is a response to simply not enough freighter capacity being able to serve the world's air cargo routes worldwide. We do see a forecast, we do envision that 2021 will be a year of recovery. And if we go back, we could, you might recall the traffic downturn month to month, according to the monthly statistics from IATA, does show an emerging recovery. The contraction is getting less severe. Again, so the month of June 2020, worldwide air cargo traffic was down about 17–18% compared to June 2019, which is, in my humble opinion, not all that bad, given the fact that more than half of air cargo capacity in passenger bellies was not available to the industry. So what you see here in the yellow bar is world air cargo traffic by quarter going back to the beginning of this century. And the primary drivers of air cargo traffic are economic activity as measured in gross domestic product, or GDP. But within GDP, we also look at the trade and merchandise goods, which is the magenta line that you see there. GDP is the turquoise line, and very important to the air cargo industry is industrial production, which is a measurement of manufacturing, mining, and utility activity. Air cargo, first and foremost, is an industrial tool. It is a tool because manufacturers needed to keep inventory to a minimum, and their value chains and their production processes moving at top efficiency. What we have noticed over the years is that freighters tend to be very busy at the end of the week and the beginning of the following calendar week, where whatever your work week may look like, and that can vary between different parts of the world, but let's just pick, say, the Western definition. Thursdays and Fridays are very busy days, as are Sunday nights and Mondays and Tuesday mornings, because most shippers like to use air cargo over the weekend as their warehouses, quote unquote, in transit. So, and therefore, what we have noticed is a very strong correlation over time between industrial production and air cargo traffic. The stronger industrial production, the stronger air cargo. That being said, in the tables at right, you can see there that according to four different forecasting sources, the downturn this year in merchandise trade, not just air cargo, but all merchandise trade worldwide, according to across all modes of transport, not just air, but also maritime, trucking, and rail. You'll see that air cargo is down minimally about 9–10%. One pessimistic scenario that the World Trade Organization put forth in the month of April, early May, was that trade would contract a full 32% this year. I'm happy to report, since I composed this slide about 8 weeks ago, the World Trade Organization has withdrawn that pessimistic scenario, and they're much more in alignment with the other economic authorities like Oxford Economics, IHS Markit, and the IMF. So again, down around somewhere between 10 and 15%. And air cargo will probably be very similar in terms of its contraction for the remainder of year 2020. 2021, though, this is a resilient industry. We see it coming back. While we're on this slide, and I've been talking about it for quite a while, I did mention that air cargo is a niche industry. Air cargo moves about 60–65 million tons of goods put on aircraft, according to IATA, in a quote-unquote normal year. This is not a normal year. By comparison, the world container ship industry moves about 2 billion tons per year. And unfortunately, that industry is in complete disarray due to all of the scheduling mix-ups and getting crews to their container ships and getting crews off of container ships. They have to do those crew changes through the World Air Transport System. And with most of the world's passenger aircraft networks down at the moment, as well as varying states of lockdown due to the pandemic, crews have a very difficult time, nigh almost impossible in certain jurisdictions, to get to their next assignment, or if they've been on vessels since February. There are cases where some crews have been on their ships for almost 18 months. Air freight will benefit from this disruption for many months, nigh on years to come. So we do anticipate continued strong demand for freighter traffic. As I mentioned, air cargo is a growth industry. historical growth about 5% per annum for the last 40 years. And our forecast is air cargo traffic, both on freighter aircraft and passenger bellies, will grow 4.2 on average per year. And it will turn into a doubling of air cargo traffic volumes by the year 2038. Where will all that growth come from? Basically, all routes tied to East Asia will be the biggest drivers of growth. And we anticipate that the biggest market, that is between East Asia and North America, otherwise known as the Trans-Pacific market, East Asia and Europe, will be, they're currently the biggest markets, and they will remain the biggest markets at those average growth rates that you see there. The Far East, trade amongst Far East Asian nations will also be it is the world's fastest international growing market at 5.5% over the next 2 decades. And it currently is the 4th largest market, but will soon be the 3rd biggest market simply because of the economic growth and the growth in industrial production in that part of the world. So a recurring theme in my discussion today is that air cargo is a niche industry. So there are, in round numbers, 26,000 jet transports, both passenger and freighter aircraft, from regional jets all the way up to very large aircraft in the world. Less than 8%, actually to be precise, and I'm an engineer, so I love precision, 7.8% of the world's jet transports, 2,000 airplanes roughly, are freighter aircraft. Yet, in terms of total aircraft, total traffic carried, freighters carry 54% there. You can see the pie chart right, compared to passenger lower hold, which carry 46% of traffic. So again, freighters are a niche, but an incredibly powerful niche industry for the world trading regime. If air cargo traffic doubles over the next 20 years, the world freighter fleet will grow from roughly 2,000 aircraft in service at the end of 2018 to 3,400 aircraft by the year 2038. And we anticipate that only about 500-600 or so airplanes flying today will be flying in 20 years' time, which necessitates the pie chart you see at top there, right, 2,800 deliveries of production or factory-built freighters, as well as about 1,700 and 1,800 conversions over the next 2 decades. And, you know, we've looked at the relative share of freighter traffic versus passenger lower hold carried traffic for cargo in extreme detail for a long time. And this one chart summarizes our findings. Air cargo currently carries more than half of freighters carry more than one half of air cargo, and that trend we believe will continue for the next 2 decades, simply because freighters prioritize the needs of shippers first compared to that of passenger traffic capacity. If we look at the major east-west markets, and this is very important to, for example, many airlines, including SilkWay. You know, the east-west market, 75% both in the Transpac and Europe-Asia markets are carried by freighters. And even over the North Atlantic, where the passenger aircraft and current technological standard can easily carry a full load of passengers as well as a full lower hold of air freight, still 40% of air cargo traffic is carried on freighters. Pretty staggering statistic. A very staggering number in itself. And SilkWay has rapidly built a network. This network chart comes to us from SilkWay themselves, and Vugar, thank you for sharing the data that allowed me to build this chart some time ago, about 18 months ago, in a study that we did for SilkWay. And you can see the leading routes; those are in blue. But you can see to your point, Natik, the growing air freight ties between Azerbaijan and the Caspian region, the Central Asian region, and the United States. So SilkWay is obviously a market leader, a huge market leader in the Eurasian market. And I want to point out a very key thing here. If you were to draw a triangle from, say, London in the UK over to Tokyo in Japan, down to Johannesburg in South Africa, within that triangle, you will find 86% of the world's population and nearly 70% of the world's economic and industrial activity. As a consequence, Azerbaijan, SilkWay are ideally placed to serve the future of air cargo and world air trade. And I cannot emphasize enough that freighters are the preferred backbone of the world air cargo industry, and they are the foundation upon which most air trade takes place. Why is that? Well, most passenger bellies don't serve the trade route. Case in point, the world's leading air freight airport is Hong Kong at roughly 5 million tons handled per annum. There are simply not enough passenger bellies to get in there and to serve all that traffic. Freighters are preferred. Twin aisle passenger schedules, as I pointed out earlier, don't necessarily correspond to shipper needs, particularly for key industrial flows. Freight forwarders, who are intermediaries who consolidate and facilitate air trade, primarily outside the express industry, prefer palletized capacity. Anything smaller simply does not provide them the necessary unit costs that they need to succeed in the industry. Passenger bellies can be extremely limited to carry hazardous materials, especially like lithium-ion batteries, and or what we call project cargo, where you have more than one piece of kit moving on several different pallets, and sometimes occupying a full aircraft for a complete charter. Case in point, everybody knows that China is one of the world's manufacturing powerhouses, but much of the kit used in their industry comes from places like Germany, and it's not uncommon to see German specialty equipment, capital equipment manufacturers chartering entire freighters to move that kit from Germany to China. And finally, the aircraft manufacturers are building some extremely capable passenger airplanes like the 787-8, 787-9, the 777-300ER, the 777-9, which is in flight test currently. And they can fly extremely long range. But the longer they fly, and they are optimized for passenger transport, the less available capacity they have for cargo. Case in point, Qantas, prior to the pandemic, was serving Perth in Australia nonstop to London with a 787-9 passenger airplane. It is our conjecture they probably don't carry as much cargo on that route as they would, say, some shorter segments in their network. In terms of what's going on, just to remind you all what's happened to our industries, there are massive impacts to particularly the passenger side of air transport. Traffic, revenue, cash have all been severely inhibited. Cargo capacity has been severely reduced. I didn't really mention this earlier, but with the takedown of passenger capacity, yield air cargo rates have gone up significantly. And that facilitated the rise of these passenger freighter flights that I talked about earlier. But freighters, they're in really high demand, and we don't see that situation abating for the next several months, maybe as much as 18 months to 2 years. A lot of near-term uncertainty. We know that the impact is lasting in the summer peak. Well, with return in compatible PAX traffic return this coming winter. We are seeing some signs of return, but there are varying states of waves of the virus, and airlines will have to adjust accordingly. The good news at Extreme Right is that the market will recover. The market is resilient. This is not a typical downturn. It is a pandemic-induced downturn. Air freight is critical to the functioning of the world economy, and the long-term fundamentals of demand are still in place. So, in conclusion, I just want to say that road traffic struggled recently, but we expect it to recover by next year in terms of positive growth. Air cargo traffic will expand at roughly a little more than 4% per annum on average through the year 2038. Freighters carry and will continue to carry more than half of air cargo traffic, and the world's freighter fleet will require 3,400 airplanes. Now, if you want more detail on what I discussed today, we have a document that NATIG referred to in my introduction and my bio, the Boeing World Air Cargo Forecast, which we've been publishing as a company since 1986. I've only been involved with it for a little more than 24 years. So I will say that it's out on our public website. Just type in, when you get to the Boeing.com website, just type in Boeing World Air Cargo Forecast. We will be releasing a new forecast in November 2020, so just a few months from now. And as soon as I finish this particular webinar, I'm going straight to a meeting to find out where my teammates are in updating their respective parts of that document. Natik, that's all I have.
Great, thank you, Tom. Thank you, and we're looking to the new edition of the report from Boeing. Vugar, can you hear us? It's of course good to hear optimistic messages from Tom that 2021 will be recovery year. Although we are in the middle of the pandemic, there is still some optimism about the future recovery, and it's good to hear. I wanted to learn more how this global pandemic affected or mirrored in SilkWay's operations worldwide. I would very much appreciate it if you compare it in numbers. What was the number before the pandemic and what's now, and what's your expectation for the years to come?
Yeah, so the pandemic, as Tom clearly stated, it influenced actually very positively, if we may say so, on the cargo transportation, the cargo airlines, because as you know, most of the countries, they closed their borders, they made the lockdowns and etc. And this led to the fact that the basically only opportunity to get any products, any special aid, etc. was led on the shoulders of cargo airlines. And SilkWay West, of course, was one of the airlines who was leading in this project. And as I said, we have been done already more than 100 charters with such programs, and we keep doing it. Besides that, our regular programs are being increasing. Our network increased. We started to operate to the destination that we did not operate before. We operated many flights to Vietnam. We operated many flights to India that were less in the previous years. And if we say in numbers, basically, we approximately increased our cargo volumes by approximately 20-25% in comparison to last year even. And basically, I would like also note and point out that February up to April, this usually is the lowest period for the cargo airlines. But this year, we can compare February, March, April, May with such months like November, December, October, which are usually the highest months for cargo airlines before the holidays, before the Christmas holidays. And we expect that it will keep it the same way because less people travel on the passenger airlines, more they try to order online. And as we all know, this online purchasing is increasing from day to day. And most of the carriage is being done by the cargo airlines. Besides that, if we also talk about the numbers that we have between Azerbaijan and United States, from 2016 up to date, these numbers are being increased from like enormously. For example, in 2016, our overall cargo volumes carried between Azerbaijan and United States, of course, I mean, including the transit shipments that we bring from the Far East, from the Middle East, and from other destinations, it was around 5.5 million kilograms from Baku to United States, and about 6.5 million kilograms from United States to Baku. And in 2019, it already was doubled. It was 12 million kilograms from Baku to United States and 8 from United States to Baku and the region. And in 2020, for the first 6 months, we already have 8 million kilograms carried to United States and 8.5 million kilograms from the United States. So it's around another 20-25% growth in comparison to the year of 2019, which was quite good actually. Also, if we talk specifically between commercial cargo between Baku and Washington, between Azerbaijan and United States, it has been also increasing, and it's a very positive tendency. In 2016, we started with only 60,000 kilograms per year, and in 2018, we already reached 500,000 kilograms. In 2019, we increased this number, and unfortunately, 2020 has stopped the production on both ways, but still it's much better than it was before. And we expect that it will grow because the pandemic, as Thomas also pointed out, it goes a little bit, it's decreasing, and we hope that soon more and more production will increase, and of course we'll be there to help countries, to help people to develop their businesses and to develop their communication. Also, yeah, sure.
Please go ahead. Yeah. Thank you. I just wanted to ask you at this juncture, how competitive your prices are with those who are delivering the same type of services in the region. You know why I'm asking this question? We are receiving lots of inquiries as a U.S. Azerbaijan Chamber of Commerce. Lots of people, most importantly, private entrepreneurs are interested in the competitive numbers. I mean, prices. How your company is competitive in comparison with others in terms of price?
Yeah, basically, I think we cannot increase or decrease the rates on ourselves because basically, as you said, there are competitors, and we have to obey the rules of the market, and the market dictates the prices. Basically, our prices are more or less the same, maybe somewhere even cheaper than our competitors, somewhere maybe like 5 to 10% higher, depending on the product, depending on the service, and depending on the frequency of the operations to those destinations. I would say that to the region of Caspian Sea, of course, we have very little number of competitors, and the prices are of course higher, but not only our prices, but the competitors as well, because they know that there's not so many opportunities to do that. But for such destinations, let's say from United States to China, or to, let's say, Tel Aviv, for example, or we can say to other well-known destinations where were many passenger airlines flying as well in previously, the prices are very competitive, and basically the prices for all airlines are more or less the same.
Great. I see Mr. Fadil Nas has a question. Mr. Nas, please unmute yourself.
No, I'm sorry. I did not have a question, but I have a comment. I wanted to see if we can get a copy of the presentation.
Tom?
Yeah, nothing. I'll send you a copy post-webinar.
Great. Thank you so much. We'll, of course, share the copy of the presentation with all of you after the event. So if you have any question, please, or comment, please indicate your name in the chat box. We'll, yeah, Orhan Zeynal from the Embassy of Azerbaijan has a question or comment. Please, Orhan, unmute yourself.
Hi everyone. Hi Natik. Hi the colleagues. Thank you, Natik, for this opportunity. Very important, critical topic. So just very insightful presentation by the previous speakers, and just the figures were real interesting. How the pandemic is really affecting all this cargo landscape and the overall sector. So air cargo is very crucial for mitigating the pandemic shocks to ensure everybody's talking about the supply chain. So ensuring the uninterrupted supply chains is one of the main goals of this air cargo. What we see from the presentation that right now that the form of the airline strategies, they're also changing. So we can see that from the figures that almost half of the global air cargo is transported with the belly hold. It was before, during the normal time before pandemic. But right now we can see that it's shifting towards the air cargo. And what we see during early phases of pandemic, sharp drop in passenger demand, travel restriction around the world. So right now, as it is rebounded now in the form of the surge in air cargo operations. It's essential for keeping supply chains alive, our trade relation, including this bilateral, multilateral trade system working on, and timely deliver of the critical goods. What at the same time that the critical importance of the air sector now there is a need for the consideration and the revision of the current regulations for the air cargo operators. So what I'm talking about is the conducive environment to enable businesses to do more cargo. And it also implies the more flexible rules. I think that one of the speakers touched upon on this issue. So the flexibility of the rules for the companies, for the businesses are essential to move forward. Happy to see today Vugar Mammadov from the SilkWay company. It's SilkWay West is one of the leading air cargo operators in the region and overall in Eurasia. And happy to see that the company is expanding in terms of scope of operations as well as the safety and operational standards. For many years, SilkWay was, I would say, leading the key link in bringing the critical cargoes for the U.S. government, U.S. allies to the critical region of the Central Asia, Afghanistan. And we've seen that in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in other regions. So generally, SilkWay was always a critical, long-time partner and service provider for the U.S. government, U.S. stakeholders. I've seen the news that just a couple of months ago that the SilkWay also announced that opening the cargo service to Dallas, so already adding to its existing regular operations to Chicago, U.S. So we see that despite of the pandemic and all the challenges, businesses are moving forward. So we will look forward how it will operate. And I've also seen that Mr. Fadi Nahas, among the participants, is a new director for the North America. And all those steps are showing that the SilkWay is really eager to expand its North America operations. Thank you, Natik. Thank you for
your comments. Mr. Rubio has a question. Please, Mr. Rubio, please unmute yourself.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you very much for the invite. I found this extremely helpful and educational. I think just question, I believe, more for Tom from Boeing, please, is that yesterday I was looking at CNN and I saw that in the U.S., the trial phases, most of the companies that are working on the vaccine are in the third phase or second phase in the U.S. And I'm just wondering if he's looked at what that impact will have, what would be the impact on air freight once a vaccine comes into play, and given the fact that a good amount of companies that are in the second and third phase are in the U.S., that could come from the U.S. itself, and obviously that would lead to freighter demand, right, for vaccines. Just wondering if you've been able to look at that and if that's going to create an impact on demand going forward.
The honest answer, Johnny, and it's good to see you virtually. I would much rather see you in person, like in Baku when I saw you last. And I hope last I knew you were in the Middle East, correct? You're still in the UAE?
Yes, in Dubai.
Well, a very good evening, and thanks for staying up so late to hear me talk, as well as Vugar as well, and sharing our views. But I'll say this: no, in short answer, I haven't looked at the vaccine potential impact, but there are a number of other folks in the industry that have drawn this out in the last couple of days that the work on vaccines is moving pretty earnestly right now. I think that in order to restore confidence to the world transportation regime, a vaccine will be needed to protect the most vulnerable from this horrible disease. So the urgency with which to move that vaccine probably cannot be accommodated by the container ship industry. I think that these are the safest statements you'll hear all day from myself. As a consequence, yes, there will probably be, once the first proven vaccine or vaccines are available and approved by the World Health Authorities for actual use on human beings, I can only imagine that there'll be a very strong demand, urgent demand, to get these vaccines distributed as quickly as possible. So yes, and I have a feeling that anybody with freighters like SilkWay will be very key in the distribution of said vaccine. But unfortunately, no. Some of the numbers I'm hearing were staggering. Hundreds of millions of potential vials. How much a vial would take up in, say, a box, and how much would a box take up on a pallet. These are assumptions that they're beyond conjecture at this point. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for the question and answer. Vugar, I have a quick question for you. As far as I know, during this pandemic, under this pandemic condition, SilkWay is operating special, the charter flights from different places of the world to the United States, delivering personal protective equipments, right? I have recently came across with the Fox News report, TV report, with aircraft with SilkWay tail. Could you please explore on that? What kind of commodities you are delivering these days to the United States from different parts of the world?
Yeah, basically, those are masks. Those are personal disinfection liquids. Those are special medical equipment. Basically, the same things that is traveling, that is being moved all over the world. The same things are being ordered for United States. And as I said, most of them were coming from Chinese destinations. But recently, they also started to produce such equipment and such personal protective equipment in Vietnam and in India as well. So those three countries are the major providers of those equipments, of those shipments to the United States. And absolutely correct that SilkWay have been done many flights like this, and we do continue to do it. And we see that the demand, it decreased a little bit, but it's still going on. And as the World Health Organization is stating that, unfortunately, in autumn, there might be the second wave of this infection. We might see more of those flights. Of course, on the business perspective, that's good, but as an airline, as a company that put the first priority for the people's safety, and we would be happy that we can avoid this wave and continue the business in the normal way. I would also like to add a couple of words to Mr. Orhan's comments. He's absolutely right. SilkWay West Airlines and SilkWay Group overall is a very good partner of United States government. We've been doing business and flights for United States government, for DoD, for many years, and we've been there's such a project like ANHAM from the Middle East, mostly from United Arab Emirates, from Dubai to Afghanistan and other countries in the Middle East, which was delivering of perishable shipments for UN troops and for peacekeeping programs. And SilkWay is the main partner of this project, and we're like DoD's prime vendor contract. As well as for the coronavirus projects, we've been directly working with Federal Emergency Management Agency of United States. And we do continue to do that, and we'll be doing whatever we can and whatever is needed to keep those flights going, to support the countries, and to strengthen the communication between Azerbaijan and the United States. Also regarding Dallas, absolutely correct. We're searching for new destinations, and Dallas probably will be the next point in the United States that will be operating. And also, I believe Thomas will also comment on that. By the end of this year, SilkWay is planning to start the negotiations with Boeing regarding purchasing new aircraft, 777s, freighters, because we do plan the expansion, and we do plan to increase our fleet and to renew our aircraft. Thank you.
Thank you, Vugar. Tom, 2018 Boeing's report on World Air Cargo Forecast reads, is that Azerbaijan comprises 13% of entire air trade between Europe and Central Eurasian countries, namely Russia, South Caucasus, and Central Asian countries, which is the post-Soviet geography. This makes Azerbaijan one of the leading countries in that geography in air trade with Europe. What's your projection, particularly for Azerbaijan's role in air trade with Europe in our part of the world?
So in 2018, yeah, we did release the last cargo forecast that's currently available. I'm just now getting started on compiling the statistics for the Central Asia, Caucasus, and Russia region, or the former Soviet Union. As Vugar will attest, most air cargo handled by the likes of SilkWay, and SilkWay is the commanding air cargo airline of the Caucasus region, is transit. And SilkWay really, I would say, gained much experience in serving the oil and gas market from the Caucasus Mountain region all the way as far east as Almaty, just with IL-76 freighters back in the first decade of this century. What is my projection? Long term, in general, the CIS region approximates the world growth rate of about 3.5% to 4% per annum growth, per year growth for the next 20 years. But SilkWay, it's safe to say, will probably do much better than that. My estimates for something like SilkWay would be somewhere between 5 and 10% growth per annum, simply because SilkWay is focusing on the transit markets to capitalize not just on the Caspian region and the Caucasus region, but also the transit, again, in that huge area, including Europe, East Asia, South Asia, and Africa, as well as the long-term growth over the North Atlantic, which is roughly around 2 to 3%. So this is a really dynamic region, and I'm looking forward to going back out to Baku to see Vugar sooner rather than later.
Great, thank you. I see Mr. Alfred Brodner has a question. Please unmute. Let me try from my side. Yes, please go ahead.
Let me see. Okay. Happens to me all the time when we're having our own conferences here. So first of all, I want to thank you all. I want to thank you for organizing this very interesting webinar. It's a pleasure to see old friends, Johnny. And certainly again, the subject is very interesting because, we are living these very unusual times and very specific in our industry that particularly between the trade between the US, Azerbaijan, and worldwide, all the way to China, we have seen an extraordinary increase. If anything, for us, traffic inbound, outbound has been particularly out of any projections that we could ever have, So definitely for us, unfortunately, for many people, this pandemic has been a tragedy for us, in the way of our trade and business, has been, positive. And certainly we have seen, and we are seeing that there, as much as it seems very utopic at this point and something that it will not be on the short term, but we have seen that trade between the US and China, and probably with Europe, in the next few years, and again, there are some signs that this is happening, will decrease. And there will be other emerging trade partners such as India, Singapore, Vietnam, and we have seen this lately, like Vugar mentioned before, at the very beginning, at the peak of the, COVID-19, when all these PPEs were required, pretty much all the production was coming out of China, and China became, the primary source of, this type of commodities, especially bringing it into the U.S. But just lately, we have noticed in the last few weeks, probably in the last month, that the traffic of these commodities from China stopped, and we're looking at a lot of this stuff coming from Delhi. We just finalized 2 or 3 charters from Delhi, and of course, Vietnam, Hanoi, and other gateways from Vietnam. So my point is that, and this question is directed to Vugar, although that we do have some sort of interlines and we're working, with some of these destinations, what is the plan for the near future, to establish and create more solid lines and between, for example, Vietnam, Singapore, Kuala Lumpur, these emerging trade markets that we see that probably in the next 5 years, will definitely, increase a lot of traffic between the U.S. and these destinations. So, if you don't mind, you can please give us a little insight of what SilkWay plans are for the next to address these markets in the near future.
Hi, Alfred. Thank you very much for your comments and for your question. As I said, by the end of this year, SilkWay West is planning to start negotiations with Boeing about increasing the fleet and about purchasing new aircraft. And those will be Boeing 777 freighters. And once we do agree on that, and once we do have the time frames to receive the first aircraft, I'm sure we'll be expanding our geography of and roads. And of course, I would say such thing that we have been flying to Vietnam for a short period of time, about 7-8 months, back in 2014. Unfortunately, for that time, we were not so well prepared for these operations. We made notes and we learned our lesson. And I believe within the next 1 year, we will be presented on the Vietnam market. As well as we have been flying to Kuala Lumpur for 3 years, but as of this year, we decided to increase and to strengthen our market position in Singapore by stopping for a while the Kuala Lumpur flights. But I'm sure that within the next 7 to 9 months, the Kuala Lumpur destination will be one of the topics for SilkWay. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Vigor, I have another question for you. Actually, I received it from one of the private entrepreneurs. He's interested in how an individual can utilize SilkWay Airlines services through intermediaries. Can SilkWay West share the intermediaries your company works locally in Azerbaijan and the United States?
The individuals, basically, in Baku or in any point of the world where SilkWay is presented, can use our aircraft via freight forwarders and agents. Fortunately, airlines, especially cargo airlines, do not work directly with the so-called physical customers, so individuals. Because first of all, cargo has to be checked, and there are some procedures that needs to be done, like customs, security check, and etc. And for those things, we do need some intermediary companies, such agents. And for example, in Baku, an individual can come to the warehouse in the Baku Cargo Terminal, which is also one of the agents of SilkWay West Airlines, and bring the shipments to them. It will be then custom cleared. It will be security checked and will be palletized for the operation. Those will be, of course, all done by Baku Cargo Terminal or by the custom brokers, depending on which of the individual. And the same in all other destinations as well. We do have our agents. In some countries, we do have general sales agents, but in most of the countries, we work with many other agents, and individuals can use any of them. But directly, unfortunately, we cannot handle the shipments.
Great, thank you. There's two questions from Alaherdir Zaev. He's asking, what do you think about the future relations between air cargo logistics and drones? I believe this question will go to Tom, as Boeing is developing its own program on drone things. And secondly, is there any possibility that the procedure of the air cargo logistic process will be executed with the cryptocurrency in terms of payment in the forthcoming years? So basically, Mr. Zaev is asking whether you are going to utilize cryptocurrency for payments in the future. So we have two questions. Please,
nothing else.
Yes, please, Tom.
First question. So, yeah, we at Boeing are examining drone technology. At present time, though, the vehicles are fairly small. We are talking less than 1 or 2 metric tons of potential payload capability, and most large wide-body freighters that serve long-haul air freight markets that are germane to this conversation today are capable of carrying more than 80 metric tons. For example, a 777 freighter can carry 102 metric tons over a distance of in excess of 8,000 kilometers nonstop. That is an entirely different regime than what drone technology at present is being developed for. And so, yeah, I have a good friend in Kenya named Sanjeev Gadia, who is the CEO of Astral Aviation. And he is a pioneer in using drone technology to serve remote villages in places in sub-Saharan Africa. So the possibilities for drone application are pretty much, in my mind, limited to what I would call local delivery. And therefore, their application will basically be governed by the development of that technology, as well as its ability to navigate commercial airspace. And so we'll have to watch that intently over time. But for the foreseeable future, manned large wide-body cargo aircraft will be the predominant provider of air cargo capacity. Cryptocurrencies, I have to be honest and say I really don't know, not that level of detail in terms of how the industry functions, in terms of how my customer airlines charge and are remunerated for their services. I will decline because I simply don't know.
Vugar, do you have anything to add?
Yes, regarding the second question, I would like to add actually, because the first question, as you clearly mentioned, that was mostly for Tom. So the cryptocurrency. So at the moment, this cryptocurrency is, as I believe, is living the stagnating period. It's not booming as it was a few years ago, and I believe for airlines to move to exchanging and the currency in the cryptocurrency and using the cryptocurrency, we will need some time for that. First of all, the banks shall fully start using the cryptocurrency and shall fully write all the procedures how it will be done, and only after that, I believe, cargo airlines or any other airlines will be able to start using them as well, because I believe it will be done firstly on the lower level of the exchange, and then it will go to a higher level where the big companies will be using that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Arman Salmasa has a question. He is wondering if about the potential current and or potential competitors for SilkWay Airlines, and if there is any challenge there, especially as we keep hearing about China as an emerging economic force. Question for either Mr. Mammadov or Mr. Crabtree. I believe, Vugar, you are the best placed person to respond here.
Yeah, thanks. I was going to respond to that question as well. Yes, there is competitors, and the market is quite tough. And previously, as we have already discussed, the passenger airlines were also big competitors for cargo airlines because they were carrying the shipments in their bellies. And taking into account that for passenger airlines, the main income and the main revenue comes from the tickets that they sell, any kilogram that they carry in their bellies, this basically is like a bonus for them. So they do not count the cost for this carried kilograms because basically it's all covered by the tickets that were purchased by the passengers. And the passenger airlines were actually giving us hard times on many destinations. But beside that, even now when the passenger flow, the passenger airlines have decreased their flights, we do have competition. We do have many other freighter airlines basically on all roads. The only road where the competition is a bit lower is the Caspian region. But on all other destinations, on all other roads, we do have competition, and we're ready to compete.
Great, thank you. Vugar, I have another question for you. It's about the high-end products and perishable goods. Where these two categories stand for SilkWay West Airlines? What portion of your cargo globally occupies high-end technologies and perishable goods?
Regarding the high-end technologies, high-end products, approximately 10% of our volumes are the technologies, are the products for different types of companies. We do cooperate with such global companies like Intel. And regarding the perishable, perishable is quite a big portion of our cargo is perishable, especially, as I said, for such programs like ANHAM that we do carry from all parts of the world, but especially from United Arabian Emirates to Middle East. Approximately another 10 to 15% is the perishable. So overall, if we take those two products, it's almost 25% of our volumes is technologies, high tech, and perishables.
I believe we covered lots of things pertaining to the issues of air cargo logistics between the United States and Azerbaijan. We ran through SilkWay West operations. We touched upon post-pandemic situation with Tom Crabtree. He shared with us his projections, Boeing's projection, what's the future. It's good to hear again that future is brighter than it's today. Thank you again to our speakers and to all of you for finding the time and spending energy with us. Again, we'll continue to discuss air cargo logistics issues in the future as well. Please stay in touch. Please follow our social media accounts and check on our webpage to stay up to date about the future events. Thank you again. Thank you, Mr. Mammadov. Thank you, Mr. Crabtree, for your time and valuable insights.